Everybody, it's Al from Boston. Welcome to the show. Today, I have some very special guests and a wonderful panel. I hope you guys please give a warm welcome to John Brda. John, say hello.
Hey, hello, everyone. How's everybody doing today?
Awesome. We have Cyntax and Jennifer, who's going to be sitting on the panel. Hi, guys.
Hey.
Hello.
And the first time, the wise guys of Wall Street, JT.
I wore my wise guy shirt for everyone.
How you doing? John Tobacco, guys. Please give them a warm welcome. Thank you guys for being on the show today. We have got a lot of I want to spend no more than an hour. I know you guys are busy with your lives. If you need to go earlier, that's fine too. Let's start off by kind of giving a status update, John, on where we are at with MMTLP, and then we'll do the Q&A and we'll just kick it off from there. And JT, you can try to whatever you want to include in there, just by all means. I know you have extensive market making background. I know you have a tremendous amount of knowledge in the subject matter, and I thought this is the perfect fit. Let's kick it off, John Brda.
Yeah, so on the MMTLP front, as everyone knows, myself and three other individuals, we put together some cash and hired Wes and his group, Wes Christian and his group, and as well as Share Intel, to gather some information about what went on in the trading of MMTLP, that just ended, obviously, December 9th of 2022. That investigation is still ongoing. We have meetings tomorrow and Wednesday in New York to kind of discuss, the different plan of attack and action. So that's really an ongoing process from the legal front. We also have, hintings of people working behind the scenes in their own lawsuits directly against FINRA, both out of Florida. Well, obviously, so we saw that Brda, and then another gentleman out of California has a complaint against Fidelity that may be escalated. So everybody's kind of doing their thing and working their avenues. And we are also trying to, see if we can't get some support from Congress and particularly the House and the Senate that may have some influence over, FINRA and the SEC to get to some answers. As of now, 51 days since the halt, we have not heard one peep from FINRA or the SEC other than what they've responded to individual investors that have called them and said, we're working on it. Really, that's about it. So it's a hurry up and wait, unfortunately, from that aspect. But we have to continue to hit it from all sides. What Cyntax was involved with this weekend and with the SEC Occupy SEC rally was a fantastic, cool event. And these are just just one tool in what we need to do in order to keep this at the forefront. And I know that was many companies involved with that, but still, MMTLP was represented really well. And I think it's just something else we need to pursue and keep pushing on.
Okay. Let's talk about legal stuff for a sec. So we got two people that are filed paperwork, one down in Florida, Rosa. There hasn't been any traction with that in terms of the Fed, and no progress to meaningful progress, at least.
Well, with Rosa, I think they responded over the weekend, or maybe it was Friday. And so they had till Feb 1 to respond. I think that information is out on the net now.
Okay.
But I do not believe the judge has ruled on the response yet.
I see.
But it's out there for you to read. So
the heel dragging has begun, basically.
Yeah.
I think they're trying to buy time. That's what I see. And the other, Fidelity. Okay, got it. John, let me ask you this. In terms of retail investors, what can they do right now currently to try to alleviate, try to help? I mean, what can we, the individual holder, do? Can we just look for evidence of more fraud, or how do we do this?
Well, I think, fortunately, we have just a tremendous team and army from the MMTLP folks, and Cyntax is a big part of that. And everybody's done a really terrific job of uncovering different things that went on and different, things that the fudgery that happened. I think we just need to stay in front of, keep writing to congressmen, congresswomen, keep at the forefront of FINRA and the SEC, and keep putting the pressure on. Time is on their side, not our side. So they can wait forever and just kind of wait us out, and then we just get bored with, and our lives have to do something else, right? So We just need to stay focused and stay vigilant and stay energized. And I think this rally this weekend is just another step in staying energized and staying focused on what we have to do. So I was pleased with that effort, and I heard it went off without a hitch, and nobody got arrested, and there were no infiltration, so to speak, from outsiders looking to cause trouble, which is great.
Yeah. So overall, I mean, are you remaining bullish on the stock? Are you happy that the way that things are progressing?
So the bullish nature, I just think it stems from common sense. Something has to happen. You can't hold short shares in a public company, or excuse me, a private company. So that has to settle out, and it never did. So from a logical standpoint, I think that has to come to a head some way, somehow. That does not, what's interesting about that from a legal standpoint, it does not alleviate the fact that they did this to begin with, that the shorts were shorted illegally, and all the fudgery that happened over the last 5 years within Torchlight and then Meta and MMTLP. That doesn't alleviate them of that, that exposure, so to speak. I know Wes and our guys are really focusing on that side of it, and if we can push them to settle their trades, that's even better. So, am I still bullish on it? Yes. Am I frustrated? Absolutely. This should have been over a long time ago.
Talk to me about Wes Christian.
So Wes's firm is Christian Levine out of Houston, and this is what they specialize in.
Yeah.
Is either a naked shorting or spoofing that goes on with market makers and hedge funds and funds in general, utilizing the rules that are set up by the SEC and market making activity against us and against retail. And so they've done a really nice job of putting together the specialists and expert they need to understand what's going on and how to fight these problems. As you probably are all aware, transparency is a 4-letter word to people on the other side, right? So
Yeah.
That's the last thing they want, is to be transparent with anything. So
Let me ask you this. Dr. George Palakaris, who is the CEO of Meta Materials, he went to the Las Vegas show. They did some wonderful things over there, unveiled some really interesting technology that I'd never seen. And his stock isn't able to move, right? He's not able to do anything. He's stuck in this holding pattern until this thing takes off. Is Meta allowed to trade?
Is Meta allowed to trade? Sure.
Yeah.
They're trading.
They're trading.
Right.
Just not the MMTLP. That's what the chief complaint there is. And has he been vocal? Has he been able to speak to you guys candidly and have these deep conversations about what's happening?
Well, I'm not going to comment on that, because we have a good working relationship with him, and we said we have to maintain that.
Yeah.
And so, George has been a big supporter of trying to get to the bottom of this, and George has been behind retail this entire time. So I don't expect anything but good things out of him and his company, and so I don't want to get further into the weeds than that, because we're working with them, and I want to continue to do so.
All right, I want to turn this over to JT. JT, you hear what's going on, you see it, and you hear it every day. I know you're in this fight every day of your life. We got Meta Materials has a security MMTLP, and FINRA's playing games. What do you have to say? Take the Wall Street perspective, be the antagonist in this, and then explain to me, like, what's the reasoning behind all this? Why the cloak and dagger?
Wow, that's a lot to unpack there. But John Brda, good to talk to you. I've been reading a lot about you, and appreciate what you're doing. Just as a little background for you and Al and Cynthia, I think's on the call. As I mentioned I did a space the other night with Patrick Byrne. I don't know if you heard any of that, but I was Overstock's expert for 20 years, basically. And I was the guy who was basically showing Patrick where the bodies are buried in this whole naked short selling cabal. And at one point, Wes Christian was actually our lawyer. So I know Wes, and I think, Wes, to be honest with you, made a whole new line of practice off all the intel that I gave him in those cases. So, but I respect him, and it was so nuanced back then. No one knew about it. And Wes is a smart dude. He's opportunistic, and he's almost made a career out of it at this point of trying to dig into these type cases, which I give him credit for because they're hard to prove. But John, to me, the Wall Street perspective is I've been in the stock loan business where all this shit emanates from for 25, almost 30 years, right? And my whole family's in the stock loan business. I actually invented and introduced the first ever platform for electronic securities lending, which eliminated naked shorting years ago, back in 2005, when I came out with my first platform called LocateStock.com. And that matched a short seller to an actual bona fide inventory. And there was no reapplication. So whoever borrowed it had it for the day, and they could legally short, and I could always settle the trade on settlement date. So I thought I was onto something really big. And I wrote, quite frankly, Vincent Viola, who's the owner of Virtue, gave me my first job, which was, to set up the stock loan department at a clearing firm he owned. And then that's when they were coming out with proposed reg show. And those guys said, hey, we got this self-clearing day trading firm, which is all they were back then. If they put this rule in place that we got to put an ID number and a timestamp and everything else, how the hell can we comply with this in real time? And that's kind of a lot of my suggestions in the comment period for Reg Show actually wound up in there, in at least 201T, and then there was some follow-ons to that. But so I've been in this sausage factory pretty much my whole career. When you say the leverage is and the time is in their favor, you're 100% right. Regulators don't care. Most of those regulators are sitting there with a stopwatch running until it's acceptable for them to leave and go take a job with one of the hedge funds or one of the dark pools or one of the routing companies. So all those guys have no incentive whatsoever to enforce anything against the big guys. If you look at over the years, Patrick and I have exposed naked short selling at all the biggest firms: Merrill Lynch, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan, Bank of America. We sued them all. We won every case.
Right.
But at the end of all days, the 20 millions and 40 millions a rounding error to them. It's a cost of doing business. It's, it's tax and gratuity, not even to them, So we found out, over, Patrick calls it a jihad or a mitzvah, he calls it. We were going after basically all the bad guys on Wall Street. But the other thing, and I think a lot of the MMTLP, the BBIG, all these, I'm meeting and learning from a lot of people about the specific cases. But, one of the things I was just explaining to a friend who happens to be an MMTLP, he just, popped up because he heard me on the space call, and I haven't spoke to him in years, but sooner or later, they got to hash something out. We all agree on that, right?
Yeah.
But what a lot of kind of the retail guys who they're not down in the weeds on some of this stuff, 2 days before things went wrong, the stock was 12 and change. Is that right?
That's right.
And today it's zero bid effectively, right?
Well, that's correct.
So win, lose, or draw, all these companies are carrying a $12 short minimum with a zero cover. So even on paper, if they drag it out for 6 or 9 months, that's 3 full quarters of performance where they have a $12 short worth zero. They don't have any tax implication. It's a carry forward profit, and their portfolio looks amazing. So anything they have to do to keep pushing it off, they don't care. You know what I mean? And most of the, if you ask me, when you get down to the bottom of the market makers, and you know, I hear a lot of the talk about the dark pools and Citadel and stuff. You know, Citadel's the big papa to me that's just sitting there eating all this stuff. But you know, a lot of these retail folks, when they agree to trade for free at Robinhood, they forget that they signed an agreement that said, I'm going to allow Robinhood to take my order flow, bundle it all up, and go to someone to execute it for me at a favorable price and give me a rebate. So, you know, everyone signed up for it. And I hate to sound like a scummer, but you know, some of this stuff, the people got to get the straight dope. I think it's at the market maker level, me personally. I don't think it's as much Citadel as everyone wants to make them the big bad wolf. I don't care. I hate Citadel. I was sitting there pissing my pants when their AMCs and the GMEs and the BBYs were squeezing their ass. I was loving it, to be honest with you, because it was well deserved and long overdue. But in all my years, I've seen reverses, I've seen splits, I've seen special dividends, I've seen, you know, split takeovers, spin outs, spin ins, knockdowns, knock unders. I've never seen a case as complicated as this one. Okay. And I was really looking forward to talking to you, John, because I know how much work you've been doing and I know how respected you are in this community. But when I dwindle it all down, because in my career, short sellers are my clients. I'm in the stock borrow business, right? And most of my clients are legal short sellers. That's why they use the system like mine, because they don't want to get caught naked. But a lot of times, you know, some of these convertible debt guys and some of these promotion guys, they get shares. And they're 6 months restricted, and then 4 months out, they want to have a friend's trading firm start to short the stock so they can cover in 2 months. And I've actually been on every side of this trade, if you could follow me, but I don't trade. I'm the stock loan guy, right? So I've seen the dirtiest guys, and I've seen the most institutional white glove guys, and all kinds of corporate actions. Never seen anything like this. What I have seen is scummy guys filing a listing on a foreign exchange or some, you know, custom created option exchange, where they can create synthetic shares. I've seen that a lot.
Yep.
And what I wanted to ask you, because I can't really get a straight answer from anyone, and I don't think anybody's being evasive. I don't think anybody really knows down far enough in the weeds, but I take all this down to who filed the 211.
Okay. Well, I think,
and when I say to you earlier, I'm gonna venture a guess that it was like a Scottsdale or an Alpine or a Wilson Davis or something like that. But do you know who was indicated on the 211 as the primary market maker?
so what's interesting is that when that, you're kind of jumping to the point when MMTLP started to trade. And it's really important for everyone to know that it was never designed to trade.
Right.
In the prospectus, in the 14C that was put out and voted upon, it was clear as day that this was not going to be traded. A year later, after it started trading, somebody sent me a memo from the OCC and basically said, look, we started trading options, I think the first week of June, 4 weeks before we closed. And you know, when you start trading options and are doing marrying puts and calls, they're creating synthetics, right? Yeah. So that's what they did. And they ran out of shares to borrow. So they started creating synthetics. Well, the OCC actually put out a memo on June 21st, 2 to 3 days before we actually had our record date, that they weren't going to require those that were short to cover. Now, how the hell did they do that?
I'd love to see that memo.
I have it. I'll be glad to share it with you. So they put out a memo that to the guys that were holding options that, hey, we're not going to force you to cover this. We're going to see if we can get it to trade the Series A preferred before we require you to cover. So what happens is in that June time period, none of them covered. We went from 5 or 6 million shares short to 50 or 60 million shares short reported, to NASDAQ. And then when we did our offering, guess what? Nobody covered. When we did our merger, nobody covered. And so lo and behold, 4 months later, MMTLP starts trading. And it was a shocker to me. I got a call from my broker saying, hey, you've got, $6 million in value in your account. What do you want to do? I said, what do you mean? How the hell did I get $6 million on a Series A pref that's not supposed to trade? Well, they said, well, it's trading. Guess what? It's trading. I'm like, you got to be shitting me. So anyway, called OTC Markets and said, hey, this is trading, and it had information from 2012 listing me as the president, my old board of directors from 2012, the CEO who hadn't been with the company since 2013. All of this information was fraudulently posted to OTC Markets. And I said, you got to take this down. This can't trade. And they said, well, FINRA approved it. FINRA gave us information. We're keeping it up. If you have a problem, call FINRA. So remember, at this time, I was no longer the CEO of the company. I was retired. And so I called the company and said, hey, you need to get your attorneys on this. Why is this trading? They called FINRA, and FINRA said 2 market makers got together and made a trade. Therefore, we have to post the trades and give it a ticker and continue to trade it. Pretty bullshit answer to me. But
do you know who those first 2 market makers were?
GTS and Canaccord Genuity.
Got it. Okay.
And Canaccord has been fined multiple times for filing false 211s. And just recently, they got fined $250,000 for doing the same thing. So it's
I mean, that's my point, right? 250 grand. They're like, yeah, okay, great. I'm short from 12. It's worth 0.
right.
You know what I mean? The 250 grand is like, the admission fee. That's how it looks. But so
they started trading it, and keep in mind, all of those shorts from June were short the preferred, right? So they needed to find preferreds to cover with. And so they started trading it, and we're putting up bids, and people were looking in their account saying, holy shit, I got shares here. I guess I'll sell them. So some people did. And some people took advantage of that, and so be it. I have no angst against them for doing that. It is what it is.
John, your signature was forged, right?
I never signed anything. They won't tell me what was on the 211.
Unbelievable.
So I don't know if they forged my signature or what, but I just know that all the information that was out to the public on OTC Markets was all information about me, our company, everything from 2012. Completely fraudulent. If somebody wanted to go look at that and said, hey, what is this torch? What is this MMTLP? Had all this information from 2012 about Torchlight Energy, and none of it was legit. And so,
well, yeah. So John, on that front, I was just thinking today outside the box. The SEC, FINRA and their market makers have to comply with SEC Rule 15C211.
that's
Right? 15C211, somewhere in there says that any bona fide market maker has to file a 211 to go into the stock and blah, 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 blah.
Yep.
So did anyone, Wes or anyone, file a Freedom of Information Act with the SEC? I know FINRA tries to act like they're not subject to Freedom of Information Act, but SEC is.
Right.
So
has anyone filed that with the SEC? Because the background is, you can ask in a FOIA, you can request, FINRA would have to show to
I
the
can
SEC.
answer that.
Okay, go ahead, Al.
One of the things that happens is that the SEC reverts back to a default setting, which is this would, our disclosure of this information would be alluding to trademark business processes that are organic to that company that's behind it, whoever's doing it, and it would be a breach of some kind of business secrets. You know what I mean? It's nonsense. It's an absolute nonsense thing. We had the same
So
thing.
you're saying someone in this company or someone in this community filed a FOIA with the Securities and Exchange Commission asking for any documents, emails, memos,
Nothing.
etc., related to
Absolutely
MMTLP.
Absolutely nothing. They sent back a 2-pager saying, and it's one after another. If we were to give you this, we're giving away trade secrets that belongs to the company behind it. We're not allowed to do that. And they gave us just a litany of reasons. It was floating around on Twitter not too long ago because a lot of people went the route of going to the SEC folks trying to get an answer. But it seems as if this is the way that's going around for every stock that's being manipulated right now.
Right.
If you have FTDs, they'll send you the same thing. We can't tell you because it's a business secret. And it's the same thing over and over and over again. Gensler isn't talking. His staff is basically just doing things by the numbers, not giving out any information, and they're in this weird holding pattern. And I can't figure out the reasoning behind this other than them trying to find a way out of this play, find a way to cover their own asses and try to save the market, because this is caused by systemic risk. That's all this is right now. This is systemic risk. AMC, GME, Meta, it's all systemic risk territory. They're in that place where there's no way possible they could cover. So now they're just hoping people, what's that old proverb? Just cover yourself with a blanket and just hopefully the problems go away. It's not. It won't. You're in trouble. You're in serious trouble because you lost the church's money and you got to be held to account for it. That's what's happened.
Yeah.
Can I
So-
speak to that? Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. Just real quick. So Al, you're telling me a Freedom of Information Act was filed with the Securities and Exchange Commission asking
Yes.
for any documents, memos, internal emails about MMTLP, and they
Yes.
gave you zero.
Nothing. The response back, as I remember it, if memory serves, was we can't give it away because of this reason, and it was trade secrets.
All right. Is there anyone that can share that with me? Because, as a journalist, I'm in a good spot here because, I'm kind of like an expert in the area of settlement and short selling. But I'm also a journalist. And I got to try to wear both hats smartly. But if I could see the Freedom of Information Act saying that they can't provide any of the information to a shareholder, which is otherwise public information. A filing, a 211 is public information, and the broker dealers that the SEC regulates have to file a monthly statement with their written supervisory procedures and otherwise.
Mhm.
So the disclosure of their application to be a market maker in a stock, to me, I'm not saying you're not telling me the straight dope, or maybe somebody's just hoping you go away, but to me, that's public information. And if I could see that myself,
Yes.
then I'll, go in as a reporter and ask for Mr. Gensler's office or enforcement. I don't know who's there, enforcement, but anymore, but say this is unacceptable because you're not providing the retail investors who are being injured here with public information. And if they give me a no comment, they give me a no comment, which is probably what will happen. But then I would, if I could see that and see the results, then I would file a FOIA as a journalist doing an investigative report. And it's kind of another level of bullshit if they say they don't have one even email internally mentioning Meta, NextBridge, MMTLP. So, I could help kind of knock the cover off the ball in a bunch of ways. This was just one where I'm thinking, okay, if, was it Colonel Mustard in the library with the candlestick? When I drill it all down Columbo style, I say the 211 will tell us where the fraud started.
Somebody got a copy of it, and
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So what I'll do is after the show, I'll put a tweet out there with the MMTLP folks, and we'll get that document out to you. If we can get the actual PDF, what it was a screen capture from a PDF that they just plastered it on a Twitter account, and it's got circulating through. That's how I came a hold of it. but I will say this much. I understand the SEC's need to protect some level of trade secrets. But what they can't do is cover up crime for their clients. That's just unacceptable. That's completely.
Yeah, there's no trade secrets here.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? I've been party to a boatload of 211s in my life. When you need to bring something to market, you gotta find a clearing firm and a market maker who will sign off on the 211. So there's, I would say 90, other than the CEO's signatures, 99% of the information on there is public information.
Sure.
Related to the company and the directors of the company, address, this, that, the other thing. The whoever is putting their name on the line to bring a financial instrument into the public marketplace, that's public information too, because all these BDs have to file monthly with FINRA, and SEC has oversight. So
That's
listen,
it, right? The
to
SEC.
me, I always try to drill it down to the let's call it the moment of inertia.
Sure.
Like where it sounds like there was a lot of chicanery going on behind the scenes before the 211 was filed.
Yeah.
But there's enough guys out there that know, it's just like listening on a foreign exchange. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
If you got some stooge at a BD, who's got a friend over at FINRA who's not going to ask a lot of questions, you file it to 11. Nobody says anything. You start trading the symbol. It's happened before. That's for sure.
In my opinion, the SEC has not met its burden of proving why it's holding information. A trade secret, let's use FTDs for example. FTD data is not a trade secret. It really isn't, right?
No.
And the other thing is this, right? The biggest thing that sits out to me is this: how can they prove foreseeable harm if it doesn't apply to this request? How is that foreseeable harm? Because they like to use that kind of language. Oh, we're protecting investors, we're protecting the public. Well, how are you doing that? They don't give you a concrete answer, John, when you get these documents back.
Yeah.
And I know this because I've worked with these guys.
To John Brda, I would just say that Patrick and I started our escapades fighting against this stuff in 2005. And there were literally some cases, like I think the Merrill case, for example, was finally settled in 2018, I think. 17 or 18. That's how long it dragged on.
And what do you think Merrill paid their attorneys over that time period?
I don't know what they paid their attorneys, but at that time they had taken overstock from 26 to 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
I do know what the risk because it was in the court hearings, but I'm not, it's under seal already, so I'm not going to talk about it, but the number is staggering. How much they paid their attorneys to fight this because they don't want it out in the public that they're doing this, right?
Correct. And like you said, the more you can kick the can down the road, some regulators, they paid their penance, and now they're working at the hedge fund. Some new guy comes in, he's got to get up to speed. Oh, we're gonna put this in the working group, and then we're gonna give you an answer. We're gonna give you some questions, and you answer, and then we have 30 days to answer. And then then they ask for an extension, and then they come back and ask you, well, would you do us a favor and recant your earlier question because we need a little time, but by law we can't go over it. So when you're new at it, you go, all right, we'll recant our question and we'll resubmit it, which they reset the clock again for 60 days or 90 days. Then they fire you back 50 questions, which are majority the same ones, but then they just want you to submit it so they can reset the clock again. So, I hate to sound like a grim reaper, Al, to like regular retail investors, but this is not an easy slog. And
oh no, certainly not. Yeah.
No. And I got on one of the spaces today and said, what I saw happen organically last week with the Occupy SEC and stuff, there is a level of pressure that could be put on, and it needs to be a lot bigger. But the hardest thing is the hardest, it's like a boulder. The hardest one is the first, you know what I mean? You got to get that thing moving. And then you get more people to say, oh shit, they got it moving. Let's join in. And then gravity, inertia, gravity and all this other stuff takes in, and it starts moving faster. It needs to, that movement to me is as important as West Christian. I've gotten so many calls, emails, contacts, right, from all these different companies. They're telling me how they got 10,000 signatures and they sent it into the SEC.
It's got to be a tremendous wall is what we have to have.
I'm saying, just to be a realist, you could send them in a big fat yellow. You could send in a big fat yellow envelope with 10,000 signatures.
We need real effort.
And nobody at the SEC is going to be moved by that. You know what I mean? There's not a face.
It has to be viral, and I think Roger's done a really nice job of communicating the effort. There's some things that he's doing that may work for him, but I think more than anything, we need to get companies to understand that this is organized against them, and so we need to be organized in our fight against what is happening. So
it's an interesting.
There's one of the things that happened in my journey as a CEO of Torchlight is I actually saw a video that Patrick did, and you might have been in it, where he talks about the guys that's saying, hey, you're going to have these articles written about you,
yes,
and then you're going to have this organized short, and then you're going to have an investigation, then it's going to be a short and distort, and all these things happen. And I'm like, I had a Joe Biden moment. I'm like, son of a bitch, they did all this to me. And I'm like, it's one of these things where and I'm not the only one that's happened to. There are so many other companies out there, and they follow the same game plan. And so it starts with who's doing your financings, making sure you're having good companies that are investing in your company, that are actually investors and not market manipulators. Then you've got, the short and distort people. Then you got the bad market makers, and I'm not saying they're orchestrated, but they're orchestrated. They are orchestrated. And then you have the ambulance chaser, guys who go after
class action guys.
Lawsuits, right. And we had a short and distort in our company. Actually, it was after I left MetaMaterials. The guy did a short and distort report, and 2 hours later, there was a class action lawsuit and they used the complaints of the short report as the basis for the class action.
Yeah, and then there was 5 other class action firms that jumped on board, in support of it. Believe it or not, this might be interesting for you listeners, viewers out to hear, but the way all the stuff with Overstock started was that Patrick had an old friend who said, hey, these guys got the sights on you, right? And then he started yammering about it on TV, and he was smart enough to know something was wrong, but he didn't have all the deets, right? And his main beef was a company called Rocker Partners, who was a research firm, right? And Gradient Analytics. And he's got unlimited resources if he really wants to deploy them. He had investigators, he had hackers, he had everything, right? And it turns out that, the guys at Gradient and the guys at Rocker Partners were best buddies and chums with Jim Cramer and Herb Greenberg and Gary Weiss, who used to be a big time writer. And this guy, Sam Antar, who was part of the Crazy Eddie franchise, and then he framed himself as a great fraud fighter. And we started to connect these dots and say, wait a minute, Gradient puts out a report, then Herb Greenberg does a special alert breaking news with Jim Cramer talking about this new report that just came out of Gradient about overstock. And then they start slamming it. And then all of a sudden overstock's getting cracked. And everybody's looking around like, all right, well, we got a nice business here. We got, almost $1 billion in revenue. And why the heck are these guys, talking such crap about us? And then it started to crystallize for Patrick. And I posted this the other day on Twitter, but in his famous Miscreants Ball earnings call, he said, you got the research firms, you got the market makers, you got the captured press, and then you got the captured regulator, and they're all in this game together.
It's Bezos.
And it all started, but with Patrick having a hunch that these research guys were putting out fake bad research, like Muddy Waters type crap.
Right.
And then 2 whistleblowers came to him from Rocker Partners, and they told him the straight dope that, the hedge funds and the market makers were on the call with the research firm, and they were saying they were independent research, but they were actually curating the research to be as bad as possible so they could lay into the thing,
Yeah.
So it is, when you say you're not sure if they're all in coordination, I'm telling you, they are. I don't know what the depths of it are till this day. I don't know if Kramer's still in on it, but he was. We proved it.
Yeah.
And Greenberg was in on it. He got canned from CNBC years ago. Gary Weiss was disposed of by the Columbia School of Journalism and everything else. So we kind of exposed a lot of crap and thought we made some progress. But just recently, I said to Patrick, I said, hey, man, this thing is boiling up again.
Oh, yeah.
All over the place. And the good thing is now, I said to him, we had like a special forces tactical team that was going in with a lot of money to try to, push things around. I feel like there's an army of retail people who want to get behind this now. And it's the one thing we didn't have back then because not enough people understood it, if
That's
that makes sense.
Yeah. I agree with you 100%. I think, the groundwork that you guys laid back in 2008 and the success you had with the spin out of T0 and all of that is kind of laid the groundwork for everything that's happening today. And if we can kind of go back to that starting point and then bring in all of the different people that are working in conjunction and rally around it, I think it's going to get, really what it's going to get is more eyeballs. And that's really the most important thing, is to make this uncomfortable. It has to be uncomfortable for people.
Let me say something.
I'm just saying, hey, there's got to be pressure applied from every single angle, and the media is one of them as well.
This is metastasized where this past weekend, I'm sure both you guys know, a group of investors showed up at the SEC building in Washington, D.C. And I want to usher in Cyntax because she was present there. She has the ground game to tell us what's going on, what happened. Cyntax, give us a breakdown of what happened and what you learned and just your after actions, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I've been in this game since, this particular, I'm in MMTLP, but I started out with Torch and then Metamaterials and subsequently MMTLP. And, we really had a lot of momentum after the U3 halt that FINRA placed, because at that point, those last 2 days were set for reconciliation. And that's when the shorts were going to be covering. And so a lot of people felt like, their opportunity was stolen from them, and it was, and what happened was not okay. And, but at the same time, it gave people an understanding of how corrupt things are. And we've had, the MetaFam community, that's what we like to call ourselves. And then we also, obviously there's the ape community and the ape movement. And what I really think is beautiful, and I think that we're seeing this, and it was really apparent with the Occupy the SEC 23, was the coming together of these various retail communities to focus on the common goal. And I think that's the big change. And to have John Brda and Jeremy Frommer and Roger Hamilton and help me, Brda, what's his name from Hellbiz? That's okay, you don't have to unmute. We have all these amazing CEOs that are stepping up, and they're also saying enough is enough, and retail is too. And we kind of are combining efforts, and retail really, we've unified behind the fact that despite the different nefarious activities that have happened in our various tickers, we are united in our efforts to stop market manipulation. And so we had, different locations. I was at the DC location. There was, the Miami location. There was various groups in the different SEC locations throughout the United States. And we wanted to make a presence to say, we're holding you accountable because you have the regulatory authority and you have failed retail and you have sided with hedge funds, and this is not okay. And this was just the beginning. This was actually very successful. A lot of people were afraid that it was going to be violent, that it was going to be shameful, that we would shame the movement. And that absolutely was not the case. It was very peaceful. It was educational. And it was great to meet the other people who've been in the struggle for so long. And there was bonding that happened, and we're ready to move on to the next level. And I think that was really, really a game changer for the communities.
So let me ask you this, Cyntax. Are we talking about a regular occurrence? Is this going to be is the next one going to FINRA? Is the next one going to Citadel? Where are these? Because from what I can tell, the bloodletting hasn't really started. And today was just, that incident, the rally was really just the first stroke in something much bigger that's happening, correct?
Yes, absolutely. And there was a lot of people that were watching to see how we would handle ourselves if they wanted to be involved. A lot of people are saying they want to be a part of this. I know Jeremy Frommer's got some things in the works that we'll get to you. My big push is Occupy FINRA. That's the hashtag and I want to get trending. We've been doing the FINRA fraud hashtag. I'm really bringing the pressure. And I think that's part of the importance of what we're doing, because we can all be keyboard warriors and we can do what we can on social media. I personally have been to the FBI, the Air Force's OSI, the JAG. I've been to my state's capital. I've, trying to be as vocal as possible, but there's something about being in person. And that's why I like to go to those places in person, but being in person with a large group of people, where you've got reporters that see the momentum and see the passion and see the accumulation of bodies, that is huge. And the bigger and louder we can get, the more pressure we can put. So this is just the beginning. Now,
I think that, and this is me speculating here. I think we're at that point in American history where so many people are pouring into day trading, using apps, especially for trading, that Wall Street believes that it's just going to be, hey, we can do whatever the hell we want. More people are just coming in, and we can just rip these guys off as well. The thing that they didn't realize was that these are people that are willing to mobilize. These are people that are willing to not just talk on an internet forum like Reddit and make a video. These are people that are going to action, that are going to make something happen and do something productive and make and force change within the system. And I think that's tremendous because it's bipartisan. It isn't a Republican, Democrat, independent thing. It's everybody that's involved. That's the beauty of this movement. That's I don't know how you guys feel about this, but a lot of times people have us divided, Democrat, Republican. This is the one thing that I could see that's non-bipartisan, where everybody gets along. And one of the things that our friend JT and I is Mr. Patrick Byrne. He is going to start an initiative that's going to be addressing this. The difference this time between what we're doing and what Patrick's going to be doing is this is going to be lawfare. That's a compound word. He's getting the lawyers involved, and we're going to get a team together, and we're going to need retail investors' help. And stay tuned for this. If you're listening to this, stay tuned for this. This is going to be a big thing in the future. We're assembling a team, we're getting the lawyers, and we're going to go fight in court. Now, this is bigger than anything you'll see in the past, at least. The fact that they're getting a team of lawyers together that are all ex-Wall Street guys that know the system, that know how the thing is rigged, and the fact that we're taking it to the highest court in the land. We're talking about SCOTUS. We want this thing to happen, and we need your help on this. And we're going to get more to this as this comes together in fruition. But John, JT, do you guys have anything to say? Jen?
I do, actually. I was just going to say, we are doing a lot as retail investors, and thank you guys so much for everything you've done in Cyntax. Thank you for going to the rallies and taking a leadership role there. I would just say there's a lot of things retail investors can do, even if they're home. There's the fairmarketsnow.org site where you can actually go on and you can register and actually send your congressman letters about what's been going on within these different tickers. You can also go on CEO Block on the website, and you can just, get some information on what the CEOs are doing to get involved with, trying to combat some of the corruption on Wall Street. And what I've tried to do too is just pass the information within my company. And, if you guys are out there and you're working for these big companies, try to pass that to your upper management and try to get them involved, because this is touching everyone, in all different companies, in all different, verticals. So really try to get everyone involved, because it's affecting everyone's investments, whether it's pensions, 401ks, we're all affected, guys. And if we don't start doing something about this now, our kids are going to be affected, our grandkids, and we're just going to continue to get, adversely affected by this. It's not good, and we need to do something about it now. So thank you for all your efforts, for everyone on this call, everyone listening.
Thank you so much, Jennifer.
Thanks,
Look,
Jonathan.
I want to first start off by saying thank you to JT and John Brda and Cyntax for joining me and Jennifer today. We really appreciate you taking the time to do this, guys. It means a great deal to us. And I want to say the following in closing. In the movie Lawrence of Arabia, T.E. Lawrence had a discussion, a dialogue with some of the small army that was fighting against, it's a small Bedouin army. They were fighting the war against the Turks. And he said, big things have small beginnings. And the rallies that we're seeing, the discussions that we're having, the dialogue and the community that we're building are the small things. It's the small beginning. And one day we will wage war against these guys, and we will get our justice. In this life or the next, we will get our justice. John Brda and JT and Cyntax, thank you so much for joining me on this live. We will do another one once we start having some more traction on what's going on, and we'll have a round table. We are going to invite Mr. Frommer, Jeremy Frommer, and Mr. Hamilton, and Patrick will be on the next one, and John, and I hope JT, you'll show up for that as well.
Yeah, anything, and you can talk to Patrick offline, but anything you need from me to help, I'm here for you guys.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Hey, John B. I think someone connected us, but my email is jt@liquidlunchtv. If you could just shoot me an email, JT, my initials at liquidlunchtv.com. If you could just shoot me an email, I'll give you my contact info. And Al, I'm sorry to take it over, but I just want to say to Jen and Cyntax and John, thank you, for having a good discussion. But the movement that started last week must get coordinated to one message.
Yes, sir.
And everybody's got different symbols, but the message is corruption, enforcement, naked shorting hurts retail investors. You know what I'm saying? If you ask me. And it needs to be hundreds and thousands of people for the media that doesn't want to cover it to cover it, if that makes sense. So they don't care about all of us going on message boards and Twitter and spaces. That's, we've already seen how the government deals with, social media interactions. Human beings at FINRA offices, at SEC offices. The news wants to see crowds, and I'm not talking about belligerent, civil disobedience, but I'm talking about peaceful protest where people get out there and say, hey, we're getting hurt, we need help, and the news has to report on it. And from my angle, I'm on Newsmax. I got approval to do a couple of 2-part series on what's really going on at the SEC. And I'm going to be following up on that. I've known Jeremy Froma for 20 years. We've been friends, colleagues, comrades. I'm already talking and working with him, but we need to figure out how to get the group into one fist and then point the tip of that spear with a whole bunch of broad fighters behind it, in a coordinated, strategic way. And then that's the only way things will happen, if you ask me.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate you acknowledging the need there is there. That's a big important thing. Then we will address that, and I'm sure Patrick will as well. Hey guys, thank you so much for everything. We really do appreciate it. This is Al from Boston. Stay tuned for the next interview. Take care. See you at the bell.